Now I know what you all are thinking, but since you're here, why not try paying a little attention? Every few years, as if it was the world's slowest revolving door or something, the question gets sparked in our society whether or not Americans should retain the right to own firearms. As if it were something that we should just sort of evolve beyond the need of having. As you very well know, the debate is almost always sparked by a mass shooting where the killer was somebody with no real political motivation other than they were just crazy. The inevitable aftermath of which is that a whole bunch of really emotional, really stupid people get up on podiums, throw their fists into the air to say, "No more! No more guns! We can save lives if there were less guns on the streets to keep crazy people from killing!" So, bromandos, today I'm going to be discussing 5 common sense arguments for gun control that are anything but. These are arguments you hear propagated by shills in the media all the time, so if you are a supporter of the Second Amendment, hopefully this video will give you some ammunition to combat their arguments, and if you're on the fence, you know, despite the entertaining tone I take, hopefully I can answer some questions for you as well. Number 1, America has an enormous problem with gun violence. Yeah, so the first bit of bullshit I'll be grinding under heel for you today is the idea that America has this horrible, surmounting, and growing problem with a gun epidemic. No, I'm sorry, New York Times. According to statistics by the FBI, America does not have an enormous problem with gun violence. Actually, gun violence, violent crime, peaked in the 90s and is now the lowest it's been in decades. And yes, while it's true that there are rounding up around 35,000 gun-related deaths a year in the US, just tossing that number around without actually talking about, you know, the circumstances related to those deaths is being really dishonest. 2/3 of those deaths are self-inflicted, and practically another third is gang-related. And just like no one is out there advocating for more dead kids, no one is out there advocating for more suicides or gang crime. But Thompsonator, European countries took away guns from their citizens and they have less gun crime. Really? No shit, wow. That's like saying we should deforest the entire planet so we can reduce the amount of paper cuts. Number 2, America should do what Australia did, where the government bought the guns back. If you actually think this is a good idea, do yourself a small favor. Put this video on pause and go visit every teacher you've ever had, including the ones who were dead in the ground, and thank them for failing you. Mandatory buyback. Mandatory. What the Australian government did, more or less, was essentially go door to door, ironically, at gunpoint, and say, "Good day, mate. No worries. We're gonna take your guns now, right? But we're gonna pay you for them. It's not like we're tyrannical or anything. Now, if the American government tried this, granted, it would work. It would work except for the fact that there would be a fucking civil war overnight. And no, the far left and their precious government would not win. I'm not sure if these people are aware of this thing called history, but there was this war called Vietnam where we tried to place a standing army in hostile territory and fight a ideologically driven enemy who looked like the average common day citizen. If the US government tried to fight its own citizens, every government installation from sea to shining sea would be engulfed by militias a la Red Dawn style within weeks. Supply lines would break down, half the military's equipment would probably get stolen, and do you really think the military and police, men and women who swore to uphold the Constitution, gave it their lives and made an oath to it, do you really think those people are then going to turn their backs on that and be okay with abusing their friends, neighbors, and loved ones just because their superiors told them to do so? No, more likely, half these people, most of which have a very strong sense of honor instilled within them, are going to turn their barrels back on Big Brother and say, "Fuck you." Number 3, more gun laws will decrease gun deaths. Once again, addressing the idiots in the room, has it ever occurred to you that the only thing standing between us and the barbaric brutality that we read about in history is modern weaponry? Let me put it this way. What exactly is poor widowed granny supposed to do to defend herself? Take up Krav Maga? Buy a huge dog? No, well, sorry, Granny. Good luck waiting for the police then. I'm sure they'll get there in time to take care of you. Their national response time on average is only like 10 minutes. But let's just say you are some huge, ripped, jacked, black belt son of a bitch. If Florida man, high on PCP, decides your face looks like a tasty snack, you're still screwed, dude. Guns are the great equalizer. Guns level the playing field so people can defend themselves against those 3 times their size who still wish to do them harm. Here's a simple question. If we enact more gun laws, do we expect criminals to follow them? No, really, it's like the world's simplest IQ test. Again, I'm not sure if it's occurred to the people marching in the streets to take away the Second Amendment that potentially more dangerous than a maniac with a gun is a maniac with a very well-placed match. Or, these other things called, bombs. There is no law that criminals and crazy people are gonna give a shit about. You're just gonna make it harder for good people to defend themselves. Number 4, well, we don't want to ban all firearms, just assault weapons. Yeah, that's all good and everything, except you might as well be asking Congress to ban the color of air. My first foray into discussing controversial topics on YouTube was a video I did about a year ago debunking what an assault weapon is and isn't. And you could go watch it, except I'm going to save you some time today by just skipping to the punchline, which is, there is no such thing as an assault weapon. If such a thing even exists, technically, it would be a fully automatic rifle used by the military. Private citizens cannot own fully automatic weapons. The AR-15 is not fully automatic. It is not a gun the military or police would ever consider using. It is a semi-automatic sporting rifle. And before someone who probably knows nothing about guns tries to make the argument that, well, okay, let's just ban all semi-automatics, that would describe nearly every gun made in the last 100 years. Like, maybe you don't know what you're talking about, man, but you know what, go ahead and ban all the sporting rifles, because I'm sure that will really hurt the gang members not using them. But you want to know what's really the shit cherry on top of the Down syndrome cake? We had an assault weapons ban. Yeah, back in the 90s during peak violent crime when it was really high, we had an assault weapons ban, and it outlawed the ownership of a whole bunch of weapons loosely defined to be assaulty, and it even included anything that fired over 10 rounds. This ban occurred in 1994, and it expired exactly 10 years later. And just to save you the effort from Googling it, Columbine was in 99. Number 5, the Second Amendment was never meant to apply to modern weapons, only muskets. I've discussed a whole lot of crap that really pisses me off so far, but the thing that really grates against my ballsack is the ass-faced douche who will sit there and pretend like they have nothing but respect for the founding fathers, that they love the Constitution and its core concepts, man. But then turns around and thinks that the founding fathers were so stupid that they never saw weapons technology advancing beyond what they had at the time. Really? So you're telling me that you have the gall to believe that because these men lived in a time before iPhones, they must have been so ignorant, they must have been so unenlightened that they didn't know that before the musket, there existed these things called swords and bows and arrows. And before that, clubs, rocks, sharp sticks. Surprise, cockfags! Repeat shot firearms were already in the prototype phase at the time the Second Amendment was drafted. Exhibit A, the pepper box pistol. And no, the Second Amendment does not only pertain to the military either. There was no American military at the time it was written. Anyone who was willing to stand up and fight against the government at the time, which was the British, was considered part of the militia. Saying you need to be in a militia to carry a firearm today basically means you're making the argument that to carry guns, you either need to be in the National Guard or the guy from Ruby Ridge. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense now, does it? I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry to be so flippant, but I have searched high and low, and I cannot find a single good argument for gun control. Saying that we're going to stop mass shootings by disarming the law-abiding populace is like saying we're going to prevent terrorist attacks by taking away private pilot licenses. It will not work. But you know what would work? You know what would decrease gun deaths potentially by 66% in this country? How about actually giving a shit about the people killing themselves? How about coming up with real solutions to help them find a will to live? And you want to know, just a little crazy side note here, you want to know who's overly represented as a demographic in suicide statistics? White guys! White guys kill themselves the most in this nation, along with trans people and veterans. If the people out there marching in the streets, if the media actually gave a damn about saving lives, they would care more about helping those people instead of pushing teenagers into lifestyle decisions which are statistically much more dangerous, you know, caring about the people, the men and women who fought and died so these idiots could powder their assholes, and, you know, not blaming white dudes for just being born with the wrong color of skin. You know, it's almost like it's not about saving lives to these people. It's almost like it's more about advancing a political agenda for them. Because you see, when most of the guns are gone and taken away from good people, they'll be able to turn around and abuse the voting blocks they don't like, carte blanche. And don't even get me started on the European Union and their advanced society. I feel nothing but concern and pity for my British viewers. The UK sucks. You are living in a dystopia where you can be arrested for making the wrong kind of jokes on social media. And no, incidents like Count Dankula are not isolated. Just, you know, FYI, you are living in a country that elects politicians like Mr. Part and Parcel Sadiq Khan himself, who I would say should check the expiration date on the crumpets he's been washing down with his tea lately, except in reality, the problem is that he's just a regressive Muslim. It's almost like after we decided to kick your asses in 1776, your government said, "Oh, by Jove, let's bloody make sure the people can never do this to us back home," and they bloody made sure you never would. Only problem now is your government is failing you and abusing you. So, which means that if that continues long enough, there will be a war where millions die. And at the end of that war, most likely there will be an American soldier standing there helping you rebuild and saying, "I told you so."